Hey, thank you, everybody. This is the fourth AI Lunch and Learn that we've had in the last 4 or 5 months. This one's about product experiences. We have two amazing speakers today. My name is John Bracken. I'm the co-founder of the SparkWorks Collective. SparkWorks Collective works with startups and innovation teams of larger companies, and we're focused on design, product, marketing, and business operations. And we have a number of executives who've worked in startups or have executive roles in larger organizations. With that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker today. His name's Steve Chazin. And Steve has actually had a storied career. He started with working at Apple in the 90s for Steve Jobs, and probably a period of incredible transition for Apple. Probably one of the greatest turnaround stories that we've seen in business. Since working at Apple, he had stops at Cisco, Salesforce, maybe a few startups, and most recently Alarm.com as a product executive. So with that, I'd like to introduce Steve. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Steve Chazin. I'm also founder of a consultancy I call Skytech.io. You can visit that website. I talk about AI a lot, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity at Refraction. I want to start by welcoming you to what I call the digital renaissance. And I think today may be the most important day in the history of human existence. Bold words, right? What I believe is that in every age of human history, there's been a technology that has changed what it means to be human. We don't think about it that way, but I've been thinking about it a lot. It started in the 15th century with the invention of the printing press. Before the printing press, information was locked to just a few people who could read or write. After this invention, the entire world was able to understand what other humans were thinking. They can debate the concepts, they can build on it. All of this changed the way we think. Before the printing press, very few humans could read, even fewer could write. But now reading and writing is part of the basic human experience, right? That tool changed us. 500 years later, the internet came along. And this tool made it possible for us to have access to any information anywhere on Earth. Right? We could learn any idea, and more importantly, we can publish our own concepts to anyone, basically for free. We didn't need a printing press, we needed a Wi-Fi signal. Now, AI, only 40 years after the internet became popular, is standing to change our brains and our reality again. And I believe for the first time in our history, this tool allows people, normal humans, to create anything they can think of just with an idea. So I call this the digital renaissance, a new creative era shaped not by machines that think for us, but by machines that think with us. Now, I know you're sitting there going, wait a minute, AI is like the end of human creativity. I know I've heard a lot of negativity about this since it got started, but I believe we're witnessing the expansion of human creativity on a scale we've never seen before. And you're there. That's why today's the most important day in our history. Now, I want to roll back the clock 50 years to when my dad brought home this device from his job working as an engineer at RCA's David Sarnoff Research Center in Princeton, New Jersey. This is the the HP 35, named, interesting enough for product managers, for the 35 buttons on the front. And this was the first technology that normal humans could afford, that allowed them to augment their brain. When I was 7, my dad brought this home. It cost about $400 in 1970 something, which is relatively speaking about $3,000 today. And he didn't want to get in trouble bringing home tech from the office, so he put it in his bedroom. And he said each of us could come in and we could approach this tool, but we had to have one arm behind our back and we can only use one finger. I remember this. And I was 7 years old at the time, and for some reason my sevens times tables was hard for me. So the first equation I ever asked a machine to answer for me was 7 times 7 equal. It did the equation and it came back with the answer. It's just plain old 49. And at 7 years old, I'm like, come on, this is like a parlor trick, right? It's just doing what I'm doing, is remembering how to do it. So I gave it the largest calculation my little brain knew at the time, which was 12 times 12. For some reason at schools, our times tables end at 12. I have no idea why they picked 12. But so I entered 12 times 12, enter, and I swear it thought, because it took a little longer than 7 times 7, and it came back with the answer, 144. And I was like gobsmacked. I'm like, okay, how? So then, I still think of it as an epiphany, but at 7, I decided to ask a piece of technology to answer a question that I, a human, did not know the answer to. So I entered 1, 2, 3 times 1, 2, 3. I hit enter and I stepped back, and it did take longer this time, I swear, in my memory it did, and it came back with the answer, 15129. I think I remembered that because it was so surprising. And I look at my dad, look at this thing, and I'm like, Dad, how? How can it do it? Like, I can understand if it's got times tables and it's looking it up like me, but how can it do math? And my dad, he was so proud because he was an engineer, and he's chest puffed out, and he looked down at me and goes, well, son, there's these new things. They're called integrated circuits. I'm like, what's an integrated circuit? He says, it's a chip. And what's a chip? A chip are like tiny wires that are on this device, and the device goes inside the machine, and the chip does the math. I thought about it for 5 minutes, and I was like, Dad, so there's little wires, right? He's like, yeah. It's like, Dad, how can wires think? And my dad didn't have that answer. And actually, that was like the origin story for my whole career in technology, because my dad didn't know an answer. I had to figure that out. And that's been on my mind ever since. But what's interesting to me, the reason I was so excited about this, I thought I was going to be an astronaut then. And my dad told me it was because of these tools that humans ventured to the moon. That without them, humanity could never leave the planet. And it made perfect sense to me that humans were better with this tech. It made us capable of things we could never do alone. No species on the planet has ever had that advantage. So when I was 12, again, I was pretty early at this, my dad brought home this device. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it, but this was one of the very first personal computers that you could build yourself. My dad brought this home in a bag of parts, and with a soldering iron, I built my first computer. And at 12, my friends thought I was crazy to spend time in front of a machine programming it. This is what programming looked like in 1970 something. But here's the thing, to use this, which I thought was amazing because I could think of something, program it, tell the computer to do that, and it did exactly that, bugs and all. But if I think about it now, I had to learn what was called machine language. That is the hexadecimal characters on that screen, and I had a hexadecimal keypad. I was literally organizing the ones and zeros in the exact order to tell the machine exactly what I wanted it to do. That's the binary code that the brain understood. And for 50 years, this is what humans have had to do. We've had to translate our messy ideas into code to tell a machine what we want it to do. And people have gone to school to get degrees in this. Computer science didn't exist when I was coming out of high school. It's a big career now. And yet now, 50 years later, I can just imagine an idea in human language and express that concept in a prompt to a computer that writes the code for me. And my son, who was skeptical, was saying, well, Dad, can you write an unbeatable tic-tac-toe program? I was like, I can't, but the AI can. And then I did it, and he's like, well, could you make it so the human goes first? So I went back to the prompt and said, can you make it so the human goes first? And now that app is sitting on the bottom of my About page, skytech.io/about. If you go to the bottom of the page, try to beat the AI. You won't. You can't win at tic-tac-toe, as my son taught me. But the beauty of it is I had an idea, and within seconds, it existed in the world we live in. Humans have never been able to do that before. So now, in 2025, you do not need to be a trained illustrator to create amazing art. You just need an idea. You do not have to go to film school to create a movie. You don't have to raise funding to get this movie greenlit. You just have to have a good idea. And today, if you have an idea to build software, you can just describe it to the computer and it will do it for you. And so the defining shift in my mind of the digital renaissance is this, is you no longer have to master the tool to realize an idea. And if you just stop and think about that for a second, it's never happened before for humans. We've all had to learn tools. We've told ourselves we can't do this because we don't know how to do that. I don't have a degree. I didn't understand this. I don't have the certification. People will think I'm a fraud. All those excuses are gone. You now can create something that you've always wanted to create. And it's liberating. And so I did this, all right? So I had this idea for a simple solution to engage parents at bedtime. Because I know how, being a parent and now a grandparent, I know how bedtime can go off the rails. So I wanted to create something that was really simple, and I've had it in my mind for a while. Can I come up with a really simple app that would text a parent at a time of their choosing a custom story about their child, maybe about what the kid did that day? So at bedtime, they can get them in bed, they can read them their custom story, they can hear about themselves. Books are great. I will never remove a book. Kids love books. They're miracles in themselves. But this is something different. But I didn't want it to be another screen. I didn't want it to be an app. I didn't want to have to log into another solution. I just wanted something simple. I didn't know how to write this app. I've always thought about it, but I just asked AI to do it for me. So this is my prompt. This is the exact prompt I use, and it's a terrible prompt. I want you to know you don't have to go to school for prompting. You can be really bad at it, and it will get the intent. All right, that's what I wrote. And from that prompt, Firebase Studio created this blueprint. It says, here's what I think you're asking me to do. Are you sure? I greenlit every one of those things, and I said, yeah. It even came up with the title of the app. I would probably not have come up with that myself. There you go. So I'd like to show you the app. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's switch over to that if I can. I hope so, if it's working. All right, so this is Dreamweaver. And by the way, the app is live today. I call this my launch and learn because it's been private till now. Now you know. It's at skytech.io. It's at dream.skytech.io. And when you log in, all we're going to ask you is your name. Hold on, I can move the mouse over here. Your first name, which you could lie about. I won't even ask you your email address, and we just need your phone number. And the beauty of this is I want it to text you a story. So I want to be able to send you a link to the story every night. I don't need anything else. We don't validate names. And then you give us your child's first name. Again, you could make that up. Whatever interest your kid has and whatever colors. And that's it. And then pick a time you want the story to arrive and what time zone you're in. We'll pick your time zone by default. And then over here, this customization, I've reserved this for premium users, which I'll get to in a minute. But with that, it then creates every day, if you log into your app and the first time you log in, it grabs a cookie so you don't ever need to do it again. It'll tell you your story. So here's tonight's story for Eliana, who loves cooking and gardening, and her little story about strawberries. I've even made it with AI to be able to speak the story to you. And this cost almost nothing. I could take the story and create a new one every day, or maybe Eliana really wants to continue the story today about, she calls me Papa Daddy. Papa Daddy's presentation. And now I can preview that part and see how it's going to add to that story. So there's today's story. And then at the end, just then Papa Daddy appeared carrying a big blue basket. Story time, he boomed with a smile of his orange butterflies. So anyway, it ties me into it, and then it will remember that later.
So the AI made up the story, not that it looked up for a story tonight.
So every day it makes up a story based upon the little interest that I put in, which was in that profile, her name, and any historical story. So school, reading, and family are her interest. But over time, over here, it's hard to see, these are things that she had asked me to add to the story, and I'll get to that later. And so it pulls from these things from time to time and adds that into the story. So it builds a story arc for her. And then what's beautiful about this is if the parent wants to go back in the calendar and see a story that was written for them they really loved, they can go to that one story, share that link, paste it into a chat, and then the person can read this whole story without logging in and sign up for their own. So there's all kinds of really tied into it. There's all kinds of help structures in it. I even have a mechanism for you to share feedback with me. And as the admin, again, the AI wrote all this over a course of maybe 3 weeks, going back and forth. It created an admin dashboard for me. We got one new user today, a free user. I can see that was this person right here. And then if I drill into someone's account, I can see when they joined, who referred them, referred by me, how many times they've changed their stories. I can even simulate all the SMS going back and forth so I can make sure it worked on my side. I even have a little preview of what every story looks like so I can go in and validate it's done. She's a premium user, so she can also listen to the story, and any of the people she share it with can listen to it. So it's like a great way to like share their enthusiasm for it. All right, so I could go on about my app forever.
So in the back end,
Yeah.
how do you create?
So I didn't create any of it. That's the beauty of this. All I needed was a basic understanding of how Firebase and Google's system works. So what I had to do, and it told me what I needed to do, when I said, okay, now this is what I want. What do I have to set up? And it says you need to set up a database on Firestore. Here's the script to setting up a database on Firestore. I never did it before. It walked me through it. So every day you came back, I wanted to text you a 6-digit code to prove it was you. Google decided that's not a good idea. They had never seen this before. SMS is always a backup proof that you have a login, not the primary proof. So I had to rip out my entire Steve Chazin built authentication system and put in a Google one. And the AI told me how to do it.
This is Gemini?
This is Gemini, yep. And a bunch of other things. Yeah.
I just want to ask, are you like using N8N in the background?
Using what?
N8N
No.
automations?
Nope. And I can show you the code if you want. It's pretty.
No, I just want to exactly.
I have a little better understanding than I did when I started, but my point for this and the takeaway is I didn't need to know any of this. It taught me what I needed to know, and it instructed me for how to do it. I mean, I had to tie in an SMS sending service. I want to tie in an email service, which I didn't start with, and it told me everything I needed to do, which is pretty impressive. It's like having a friend to working through that. Yeah.
Do you have to pay Gemini subscription?
So this is the beautiful thing about this. Since I started working on this in July on and off, and then I really like put more work into it in September, I've spent 16 cents with Google. Okay, they are giving away, this is the beautiful thing, this is why I think today is the most important day to learn this, is they are not trying to make money on this. They're trying to beat everyone else out. It's just like Amazon in the early days of losing money in distribution. They don't care. They're just trying to prove that they are the platform that people should use. And they are, but if you go through API services like with Gemini, you don't have to pay those fees. It'll all change. Give me time. So I just wanted to, I didn't want to take up all the time, but I wanted to share what I learned through this because this was an epiphany for me. Growing up with technology and understanding that I could not do things and now I could. That first feeling of being like I was 12 again, I have a studio downstairs, my wife's upstairs in the kitchen, and I was running up every hour, giggling, like bubbling that I was creating stuff again. Like I couldn't believe it. Like, it blew my mind. I felt the exact same way I felt when my friends were asking me to play football, which is my favorite thing to do, and I was coding, and they were like, "Why?" It was empowerment. So it really renewed that magic for me, and I want everyone to feel that. The second thing is I'm very tell-directed, especially when I think about how I want it, and I know certain personalities are like that. I had to stop doing that. I am not a trained coder. I just admitted that. This thing is. It's trained on how to code. I just needed to give it an idea and then see what it did with it. When I was too prescriptive, it was giving me back what I wanted, but it wasn't fully formed as an idea. So definitely let it soar. The second piece to that is, at least in this platform, I could go back at any time and revert or restore the version that was working before we made a bunch of changes. I can't tell you how many times I use that. But that freedom that you can make a mistake, you could try something, and you could undo it. If you're working with teams of coders, you ask them to undo stuff, you have a long discussion. Because there's a reason they did it, and they're smarter than you. Here, I'm not debating, I just said, let's go back. By the way, it remembers when you go back, and it's like, oh, we tried that didn't work, let's go ahead. And then the last thing is, it really does work. Like the concept of vibe coding, which came up as like a cool new thing, it works. Like it actually does what they say it's going to do. I've been around technology my whole life. There's a lot of false promises. This actually worked to the point when the app was done and I was ready to start sending SMS messages. It took me 5 times longer to get my phone number approved by humans because they want to protect people from getting spam emails. We all get spam text anyway. So I was just sitting on my hands for like 2 weeks waiting to make this work. The ugly, okay? It's not all perfect. AI, whoever programmed this, they all have the same prototype. Please humans. Like that's like their number one edict. And when they feel like they're failing us, they kick into a whole nother gear. They apologize like it's a relationship. And remember I said I would go upstairs and I'd hug my wife and I'd run back downstairs. I would go up there and commiserate with her about what my AI did to me that day, right? It wrote me love letters. Like it would say, I'm sorry, my attempts have failed, I apologize, I'll do better. And that it was so profoundly, it was consistent that it knew how to fix it. And this is the definitive fix. I can tell you it said, this is the definitive fix about 100 times. And I said, stop telling me this is the definitive fix when you're wrong. The reason why that is, and it took me a while to figure this out, I'm sharing this with you, is AI really doesn't know everything. It's like your questions, how do I do this? It doesn't have an understanding sometimes outside of the world it lives in. So it kept trying to fix code to fix an authentication error that was not its problem. Google was having a service issue and it couldn't get the services it needed, but it kept trying to fix the code, which it was never going to succeed at. And this is where trained engineers and developers would know this in their sleep. This is still learning. And it doesn't remember everything. Sometimes it will redo work, especially in its joy of pleasing us, that it doesn't need to do, even though the code was working. It would even sometimes, again, why I started using this, Google's been changing their platform, it starts moving things in different folders where it breaks the app. And I have to tell it, go back. So I would say in this new like digital renaissance, here's like the tips that I suggest that would help you. Number one, listen to your users. It doesn't matter how great your app is. If it doesn't solve a problem, it's a perfectly coded app that does very little. And in this case, my granddaughter, who I thought would be the perfect use of this technology, Eliana, she came up with a use case I hadn't envisioned, where I thought I'd send it to her parent would read the story at bedtime, and Eliana would hear a nice story that Papa Daddy and Pip the mouse and all that. She would look at me at dinner, we were staying with them for a month, at 7 o'clock, and or whatever time it was, and she was like, Papa Daddy, read me a Pip the mouse story. I don't have a Pip the mouse story on hand. So I built an extension to the premium version where I could text back what she wanted to the AI. So she said, what do you want to talk about, Eliana? Strawberries, making muffins, and going to school. So I text that back. I just text the word add, those things. The AI thinks about it for 5 seconds and texts me a whole new story, which then I read to her from my watch, which was like this whole proof of this is really what she wanted, not what her parent wanted, and now it works. Now I have a new premium feature from a customer. This is really cool. I suggest you create one of these. This might help your commiseration a little bit. I had it write a document it called Our Rules after going back and forth between it and giving it explicit instructions of what not to do. These were the things that were troubling me. It was overwriting a local file. It was changing API calls. And my cron job, which is the thing that sends the messages every night, that's like the magic. That's where all the code lives. And it was breaking it. So I have it every session read this document before we start coding. And now it knows, okay, I'm not going to touch those things, which is really helpful. You could also, right in the middle of the code, just say, answer this question, don't write code, or show me your plan before you write any code. And then as the human, you're like, yeah, that sounds good, but this doesn't sound right, right? So do those two things and not this last one. That's been my favorite tip because I've been going back and forth on, do I want email? Do I want to give away a free product? Like we've been going back and forth with different options, and some of those it would have made it much harder to undo. The other thing is let the AI handle more than code. I did not expect this. I thought this is just a coding tool. I started asking it for suggestions on virility, on new features, on marketing plans, on business plans. It even wrote, I didn't show it to you, it created a whole business section where I can dial up what my conversion rate from free to premium is to know exactly what my tipping point is. Given at scale, it's going to cost more than 16 cents to run this app. And it helped me figure all that stuff out. And then the last thing, which I found by accident, in in some of the mistakes it was having over and over again, I just got frustrated and I copied its answer and the error and pasted it to Grok and pasted it to Claude. And I said, Gemini is saying this, what do you think? And these things are smart enough to know, oh, here's what it's missing. I copy that response, go back to Gemini, and it goes, thank you for asking Grok to answer this for me. They all know about each other, and now we're having an engagement between each other. So I wish I had thought about that sooner. So to me, this is like really the epiphany. And I believe that we're now in this new digital renaissance where the machine finally speaks human versus humans having to take our messy, complex brains and translate for the machine. So I wrote an article about this if you want, but the most important takeaway in this digital renaissance is recognizing that the gap between I wish this existed in the world and I can do it has never been smaller. And it's liberating. And I believe humanity is on the beginning of this new creative growth because people who could never do it can now just do it. Thank you. Thank you. All right.